Hello everybody and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Welcome home everybody. Today we are going to be reviewing and discussing the movie Scream 6, which came out in 2023. After the survivors of the Woodsboro murders relocate to New York for a fresh start, Ghostface resurfaces, forcing them to confront a deadlier and more relentless threat than ever before. Maybe you're like me, just endlessly walking this ether that we call Earth, searching for that one person you can open your heart to and discuss movies with, but just have never found that person or have nobody to talk to about movies. Well, buddy, you are in the right place moving forward here, because that is exactly what ZakIsCinema is for, so please consider joining here. Obviously, if you've been keeping up with the channel, we have been covering the entire Scream franchise in its entirety leading up to Scream 7, just in a couple days, which I'm definitely looking forward to. But excited to delve into this one with you guys, so without further ado, let's jump into the positives or the things that I really enjoyed about this movie. With this movie, I adore this movie's opening and honestly think it might be one of my favorites, if not my all-time favorite in the franchise. It is such a unique, fresh opening for this franchise and especially for the slasher genre. Obviously, Samara Weaving here definitely elevates this scene, and it's so cool getting to see her in a Scream movie. And with this opening, we follow Samara Weaving's character, and it's a pretty simple setup. You kind of know what you're going to expect at this point, but watching and listening to Ghostface call her on this first date that she is presumably on and help to lure her into this alley and basically trapping her into this killer's wet dream and a victim's worst nightmare situation is just so interesting. And it's so cool how she is this film professor and the Ghostface killer, later revealed in this scene, is a student at her school. So he kind of uses that to his advantage to kind of get her guard down a little bit, talking about a topic that she obviously really enjoys. So then all of her protective defense mechanisms kind of go out the window, and then before you even know it, she's in a dark alley in the middle of New York City all alone here. And what makes this opening stand out to me so much, not only for the franchise but just the genre in it of itself, is how the Ghostface killer, the dude from Spider-Man, voluntarily removes his mask after killing Samara Weaving's character. And it's just such a wild, unexpected switch up. And I remember when I saw this movie a couple years back in the theaters, just sitting in my theater, feeling my anticipation and excitement for this movie spike immediately, because I had no idea what to expect moving forward, and it seemed like they were throwing all the tropes and cliches right out the window, and starting with the killer reveal is such a simple switch up, but it's just so captivating and interesting. And what makes this even better is the actor who's playing this first initial Ghostface character actually already knows Tara, and right after he's done with Samara Weaving's character, he crosses paths with Tara out on the street going to a party. So it's such a smart, unique setup, not only with revealing the killer within the first couple minutes, but then tying him directly into the characters and group of characters that we were just following in the first one. So again, it's just switching up the Scream formula in such an interesting way. And then even on top of that, we get this longer cold opening that I really found myself enjoying, especially on rewatch. And we get to follow this character back to his apartment. And we hear this phone call with, I presume, his boyfriend or a guy he's interested in. And through the dialogue here, we learn that they're both killers. So we're set up with this expectation that these two, they're going to be our Ghostface killers. And the guy that just killed Samara Samara Weaving's character is explaining that he really couldn't help himself and he kind of just wanted to get a fresh start, do some practice. So the way they're talking about a severe situation with the levity in their phone communication is just so funny and uncomfortable at the same time. And I feel like this whole sequence really builds to such a great payoff. I love how the character slowly realizes that, okay, it might be my boyfriend, it might not be my boyfriend on the phone, and this other Ghostface is now playing warmer and colder to try and guess where the Ghostface killer is. And, he's going along with it because he's like 90% sure that it is his boyfriend, and he is getting warmer, going closer and closer to the fridge, and then opens the fridge and finds his boyfriend all chopped up to pieces just laying in the fridge, and then the real Ghostface killer is directly behind him and then immediately killed by the real Ghostface that we're going to be following. And that moment alone, that tiny little detail, I think immediately sets the tone and especially switches up the rules and letting you know that this is going to be a different experience, at least with the motivation side to our killers. And I feel like an underrated element of the Scream franchise is its progression and changes in characters, specifically when we follow up with our characters directly after a sequel. Scream 1 to 2 is a perfect example. Scream 3 to 4 is another great example. And then 4 to 5 is another great example. And for the most part, this one is without exception. I love the banter and development of the core four here sticking together, moving to New York and going to college together and renting this apartment together feels very natural and feels like a smart, safe decision these characters would do directly after experiencing one of the worst couple days of their life. I also like where we see Sam later on in this movie, where she is the one that is clearly traumatized and stuck in the aftermath of the first Scream movie that we just saw. And well, Tara is in this different place where you can tell she's kind of in denial about some things and desperately just trying to have a normal life and kind of move on with things. So I like these sisters as they spent time reconnecting in the last movie, and now they're trying to stay connected while also going their different paths and having their very different reactions. So just sets up some really, really interesting character dynamics here. And just like with the 2022 Scream, I feel like this movie continues that trend of making Ghostface feel dangerous and intimidating, which is something that was severely missing in those first couple Scream movies. In this one specifically, he is way more violent, more aggressive, and more intimidating than he's ever been. And I think that New York City bodega scene is a perfect example of what I was just talking about. Definitely a standout for this franchise. I love the part when he chases Sam and Tara into this bodega and Ghostface ends up just stabbing people, ending up clearing out this little convenience store, kills the store shop owner or cashier, grabs his shotgun, starts clearing the store again, and stalking Sam and Tara with that homage scene to Jurassic Park, but it still has that same intensity and edge of your seat kind of thrill that you're looking for. It's definitely a scene that you'll find yourself kind of holding your breath, living vicariously through the characters that you're watching on screen. And honestly, just seeing Ghostface with a shotgun is something I didn't know I wanted, but now I hope he uses more weapons, but obviously still keeps the iconic knife that he uses. But I love when iconic slasher villains just every once in a while utilize a whole different weapon. I feel like it kind of fleshes them out a little bit, especially just seeing their reaction or expertise kind of using that. I feel like it's a small thing you can do and really gives you a nice change of pace. So I hope we see some of that in Scream 7. Kirby's return is another huge highlight here for me. She was always a character that I hope she would come back, because in part 4, you're never really clear if she actually did end up dying, if she's fine, if she's ever going to return. And and making her this FBI agent that is inspired to be this FBI agent after the events of Scream 4 is such a satisfying evolution, and it is so nice seeing her again. I'm just kind of confused as to why she wasn't in the last one, but still, I'm glad they brought her back. I haven't watched too much of the trailers, but I hope she's a part of Scream 7 as well. And I think another detail that made this Scream movie stand out to me a little bit more from the franchise is the detail of Ghostface leaving his masks from previous killers and previous movies that we've already seen at the crime scene. So every time he's killing someone, he actually continues that trend at the opening scene, leaving another legacy mask behind. And it works as a literal breadcrumb trail and Easter egg trail as a meta commentary that Scream is going for, and it's also doing something different with Ghostface. So I love both of those details, and again, hope we get some new details moving forward here. And once again, I love how these two newer Scream movies lean so far into the horror, slasher, and thrill side while never losing that fun, over-the-top, and meta-commentary side. And it balances it so well, and it just gives these movies so much more levity, actually making Ghostface super intimidating. And I feel like a perfect example of this, not only with the bodega scene, but with the apartment ladder scene, is a huge standout to me. I love how we get this apartment set up where it's almost kind of similar to that scene in Scream 4 where the core four are trapped and Sam's somewhat sketchy boyfriend is waving them over because he's across the street, sees Ghostface in Sam's apartment and is trying to get people over by going over this ladder as Ghostface is in the next room trying to chase all of them. And everyone in this core four is forced to cross that ladder over a huge, dark, scary alley as Ghostface is just shaking the ladder with the last victim right there, and just she takes an absolute tumble. So it's like violent, it's intense, and I just feel a little bit more stakes with these Ghostface killers. Like they could do some really serious damage. Like they never lose the spirit of Ghostface, but he's not like fumbling over himself like he did in the first couple movies. So I feel like with these ones, it's like giving me what I want with a slasher movie while also making fun of it, but never losing that heart. And the reason why people love these movies is because it's fun to be scared. It's fun to see characters go through intense situations as you're wondering who is going to make it out. And I feel like this movie continues that positive trend. But with that said, let's jump into my mixed aspects I have for the movie. And I really do enjoy and love having Gale Weathers back here, mostly because I love the actress Courtney Cox, but I really just hate how Scream gets in these repetitive character progressions sometimes. I was just praising how most of the time they do really good, but specifically with Gale here, she is once again just reduced to writing another book on the latest murders that we just saw in the 2022 Scream. So I feel like every movie here in the franchise teases this growth for Gale, and then the next one just resets her on that same arc, and it is tired at this point. And I really was not expecting them to do that, especially after they killed off Dewey. I thought, okay, that is going to be the point that really makes Gale this different character. But we started off here again, and Sam and Tara hate her, similar to how Sydney did, because she wrote a book on them. So it's just frustrating. She plays that character so well, but I'd like to see more progression from her. And just like I praise Scream 2022, in this movie, I really like how Mindy and Chad are Randy's nephews, I believe, and Mindy has kind of taken over Randy's exposition character, that audience perspective, screaming at the camera. And I enjoyed her scene so much in Scream 2022, but her exposition scene, in theory in this one, feels like it should work, but in execution, it kind of felt a little janky to me. I feel like having everybody just suddenly stop what they're doing about 40 to 50 minutes in the movie, movie, sit in this weird public park that we're never really in again and openly discuss suspects just feels so unnatural and not like what these characters would do. And it kind of just comes off like a reshot scene of, oh, guys, we forgot the exposition scene. Can everyone just like sit down real quick, and we're going to do that rules scene that everyone loves. So I know that's such a nitpick, but it really did kind of stand out to me here. And to me, the shrine scene and set of all the Ghostface costumes, all the evidence and Easter eggs from previous movies is very cool, but it's also at the point where the movie kind of feels a little too impressed with itself, if that makes sense. Like, it's neat visually, but it kind of stretches the logic a little too far, like that somebody could just outside of law enforcement could collect every piece of Ghostface memorabilia and evidence from all the films and no one would notice or report it missing or not really care. Like, I get having one or two of the costumes, but everything from every single movie and real life crime scene just started to push it just a little bit. So I like the idea there. I think they should have toned it down a little bit, though. And unfortunately, this movie kind of continues that trend of my negatives with the Billy Loomis character. The Billy Loomis stuff in here is toned down a little bit, but it also just felt like way too on the nose. Again, I love the idea of it. I love what it does for the Sam character, but seeing Billy reflected in his Ghostface costume, protective glass, talking to Sam, saying, when are we going to get back to slicing up motherfuckers, completely kills like any of the subtlety I feel like that angle and arc really should have had. I kind of wish it was more of a deliberately slower, more psychological descent into turning into her father, instead of just having her father like shout at her in this visual kind of way. And a scene, again, that kind of makes me feel mixed about it is that subway scene, one that I remember was heavily advertised. It's just a mixed bag for me. The setting is fantastic, and I love New York City here being the set piece for this movie, and the intensity feels so real in this scene, and Ghostface kind of blending into New York City during Halloween, and you can't really tell which one's Ghostface, which one's just a kid dressed up as Ghostface, and in this tight-knit quarters that is a subway in New York City is a fantastic idea. But it becomes frustrating that nobody notices Ghostface stab Mindy 2 or 3 times on this super crowded subway. I know New York City gets that rap for nobody really caring, a bunch of a-holes that wouldn't help you, but I don't know, I've been to a New York City subway a couple times and people are pretty helpful, especially if you're looking kind of lost. So I just couldn't imagine somebody getting stabbed on the subway and no one at least saying, hey, yo, I think someone is getting stabbed, and then Ghostface just like runs off and he's fine. No one tries to tackle him. Not one person is screaming or anything. And it, again, makes no sense why Ghostface in this moment would leave Mindy alive. I mean, he's gone that far. Why not just like stab her in the neck real quick? Like, that never made any sense to me. When I first saw that in the theater, I'm like, oh, okay, so she must be one of the killers then, because why would he just do a couple non-lethal stabbings? It makes no sense. But with that said, let's jump into the negatives, or the things that I just really didn't like about this movie. And unfortunately, this movie really starts to lose me a bit once you start figuring out who the killers are. And I am terrible at predicting stuff like this. I've never been able to do it in a Scream movie. But I remember that this was one of the Scream movies that I started to pick up on it and see where things were going. And I think it happens way too early on. Like right after the ladder scene, we get Dermot Mulroney's character, and he is the father to this girl that just died that was a roommate of Sam and Tara. And his character and reaction here immediately set off alarm bells, especially with that awkward reaction to his daughter's death and that painfully suspicious line that is delivered in such a weird way when he says, "You fuck with my family, you die." The way he says it just makes me like cringe throughout my entire body. And from there, it's like, okay, this guy seems a little unhinged. And then right from there, he just joins Sam and Tara in the Core 4 on their Ghostface hunting adventure. I'm like, dude, you're a police officer, just showed up to your daughter's murder scene. I think if you weren't the killer, you'd be tapping out like right there. So it's just a little obvious at that point. And I'm like, this guy he's got at least something to do with this. And unfortunately, that again leads to the movie's biggest problems, in my opinion, is that the reveals just aren't that good. They're not horrible. I'm very happy to say that none of these Scream movies are bad in any way. Just the climax with this movie feels so flat. The suspect pool in the entire movie feels so tiny, and there's really no big mystery here. For example, you know it won't be Sam's boyfriend again because they just did that. Scream 1 did that. They're not going to do that again. It won't be Kirby because that would just feel stupid. And it wouldn't be Gail because at this point it kind of just feels unearned and like, why are we doing that now? Which that only leaves the new characters. And sure enough, it is the new characters, which is just so frustrating. And we find out that it is the cop character that we were just talking about and his 2 kids. But their motivation just feels so weak once that's all revealed. Sure, it's cool to have, I guess, technically 3 Ghostface killers here, but finding out that they're just Richie's family, and that's Richie's dad and Richie's siblings, and they're just seeking revenge on Sam because they saw how badly she stabbed him, just feels so thin. It feels way too uninspired, way too close and similar to Scream 2, and like they're just kind of doing the same thing. And especially compared to how much buildup and mystery this movie has, being a 2-hour movie, it's just like, oh, we get there and that's it. Like the travel wasn't worth the ending point, in my opinion. And the third act here just completely falls apart. We really haven't spent enough meaningful time with any of the Ghostface characters, so when they start hamming it up during the reveals, it just feels unearned and oddly lifeless and kind of awkward, especially with Mulroney's character. I like the actor, but he just takes a sharp down turn in the finale and lacks the energy and charisma that the movie really needs. His hammed up lines just feel very awkward and very kind of weird, similar to that line we were discussing earlier. It's just frustrating when we get to the end of a Scream movie and it just doesn't all feel that interesting, and that's definitely what I'm left with here for Scream 7. And throw on top of that, I mean, our boy Chad here surviving, 11 or 12 stab wounds is beyond ridiculous. Doing the Dewey survives again plotline again feels old and repetitive, but with how badly Chad is messed up in this movie, it gets into that parody territory that just completely undercuts the stakes to the movie. Like, that would have been a really bigger character that just kind of ends up sacrificing himself, and I feel like they should have just left it with that, because now I'm going into Scream 7 thinking no, I don't think anyone's gonna die, especially if Stu's coming back too. It's like, okay, we're pushing it a bit here. And that just kind of leaves me with my point of, I don't really understand why maybe more people aren't even more upset with the direction Scream 7 is going, because I've heard the arguments that this is a satisfying conclusion or good enough conclusion for the Carpenter sisters, and I just kind of full-heartedly disagree with that. The movie spends so much time in these first 2 movies setting up Sam for this darker arc, only to leave both the sisters in what is essentially the same place they ended in Scream 2022. I mean, the third act plays very similar. Sam goes crazy on one of the Ghostface killers, and she's tempted with the dark side, but she's going to leave it in the past for right now, and it just kind of feels stagnant rather than conclusive, and just wondering what they're going to do when I get to the end of this movie, knowing there's not going to be a real continuation. I feel like it takes it another step down for me, unfortunately. But with all that being said, I would say that overall, Scream 6 here has one of the boldest openings and some of the most intense set pieces in the franchise. But weak reveals, thin motivations, and a frustrating third act really keep it from fully capitalizing on some of its strongest ideas. I think for my rating, I'd have to put this as a movie that I'd be fine streaming it again. I don't think I'd ever pay a couple dollars to rent it, but if it's on streaming, maybe even like a 99-cent on sale rental, I feel like it's worth it. At the end of the day, it is a fun Scream movie. If you like Scream, you're gonna like this, but I think just be pretty disappointed. Luckily, it's not terrible or nowhere near as unwatchable as maybe I'm making it sound to be, but this is definitely a disappointing sequel when I first saw it, and even more disappointing now. So that's about it. You guys have my thoughts here on almost all the Scream movies. We got Scream 7 coming out soon, so get ready for some more videos on this lovely Scream franchise. But I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts and feelings on Scream 6 here. Are you as negative on it as I seem to be? Do you like the killer reveals? Do they work for you? Do they not work for you? And what's your opinion on the Carpenter sisters here? Are you fine with this ending? Were you looking forward to more of an exploration for those characters? Let me know all your thoughts and feelings down below here. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.